Okay, welcome everyone. It's Chris Petri. I'm glad you're coming by and joining along. We're going to have a fun, exciting time here doing some figures in our finished painting. So let's say you have a painting, you completed it, you didn't add any figures in while you were painting it, and then you thought to yourself, after a couple days of looking at your painting, you know what, I want to add some figures in. That's a perfect time when you can settle back in. You take out your palette, you set your painting back down, you tape it down, you have everything nice and secure. You have your painting down nice and secure, everything, and then you're going to do some figures into your painting. So basically the main thing we'll touch upon here is just getting the feel of the proper size of the figure compared to the subject matter that you're working your figures into and placing your, so when you're placing your figures into the scene, you want to make sure that they're scaled correctly. So the way to do that is immediately when I look at this right now, I'm saying, okay, this is something we just painted. If you haven't seen this painting, you can always check it out. It's you just type in ink and wash, Chris Petri in the YouTube search bar, and you'll see that I have a number of ink and washes, but you'll see this one probably come up first. This is a pretty popular video. So essentially, again, the scale is important. So, we wouldn't make, a figure that looks like 20 feet tall, and then all of a sudden it's not going to fit into the subject matter that we have here. So we have these beautiful English homes here along this beautiful streetscape. So we can find one area where we can say for sure this is a door here. So this is a doorway with a roof over it. So that's like a gable roof over a doorway. So we know if we started with a figure approximately the size of a door, which is, a little bit taller than a figure would be, let's say an average figure is 5 or 6 feet tall. So that door is going to be about 7 feet tall. So here our figure would be about approximately there as far as the top of the figure. So let's sketch in since we're over here and we're saying, hey, this is a doorway here that goes into the building, and we know that the height of that doorway is approximately 7 feet tall. Our figure is going to be about the same height as that doorway. So that's fine. We can draw the head and maybe a hat, and then a body, some, upper torso, and then couple legs like that. So we just pencil it in very lightly. You can see this is I'm doing this very lightly with my pencil. The paint and the paintbrush is going to do all the work for our figures in this scene. So I'll make this figure here by this doorway, and then what we're going to do is we'll take a ruler, and what we'd like to do is we're going to make multiple figures in this scene. So to do that, let's keep the heads of all the figures the same height. Now notice I said that the heads of the figures are the same height. The bodies might be bigger or larger or smaller, but the heads of each figure will all be on the same level. So we'll take our ruler. So I just take a nice ruler here, and I'll put this across, and I'm going to put a few figures over here. So one here. Now, of course, if it's a small child, it'll be a little smaller. But if we're just saying a normal adult, so that would be here. And then here's our figure here we started with, the first one, because we know this is the doorway. So we're going to gauge and scale our first figure by a point in the picture that is easy to relate to a figure. So we know the doorway is approximately 7 feet tall. The human form is approximately between 5 and 6 feet tall. So we put our figure next to that doorway and say that's the same height. Bottom of the door is there, bottom of the figure is here. So that first figure we have set. Then we get the head height, and we say the heads of any of the figures we put in this drawing, we're going to keep the heads the same level. So, okay, I transfer this head over to here. So here we have the distant figure. So now over here, our distant figure is going to be like so, but smaller. So the body is smaller. The body is smaller, but the head is on the same level, if you can see that, right? So the head is there on the same level. And then we'll transfer again. We'll take this, and the heads are at this level. Let's make our next figure. Maybe we'll make it over here. Then we look over here and say, you know what? That might not be a great spot for a figure here. Because if we put the head here, we're going to be blocking out the bushes in this nice flower planter. Is there any place we can put the figure? Can we put it next to it, like here? That might be good. How about here? Yeah, I think here might look good because we have the white fence. So maybe if we put the figure here by the white fence, we have the head here. Same height as this head. Just a little larger, because it's going to be a little larger, closer to us. And again, the figure's going to be larger, but the head will be the same height going all the way through. And if we wanted to put a figure over here or two, let's do that. A couple figures here. Maybe a small child figure and an adult here. We'll have a gentleman here or a woman here. We'll have a woman here maybe. And then we'll have a gentleman here. So you can make up your own story with your figures. If it's a woman or a man or a couple children, and are they shopping? Are they coming back from shopping? They might have a shopping bag. We'll maybe have a shopping bag here. Okay. And you can make some movement to them, and we'll get to that when we paint them. But this is real fun, real simple. And so this is just a real quick, simple video on painting figures into a painting that you've already painted. You can go back. You might have a few paintings that you might have saved in your art studio, or you might have it in a folder. Some paintings that you've done a short time ago, and you want to add some figures in. Perfect time to do it is now. The only thing you have to worry about is colors. You just want to make sure you're using the same similar colors that you're using in your palette that you used to create the original painting. If you're going to go back and paint in some figures to a painting that you've had, maybe a year or two ago, you want to add in some figures to practice. Just try to, figure out what colors you use. So you're using similar colors. You wouldn't want to be using all different brand colors that are different colors themselves, or different, so you might use different brands of colors occasionally. So if you don't stick with the same brands of colors, they're going to change a little bit, the colors. So that's why, personally, I stick with the same brands all the time with my colors and the same colors. This way I can go back and take older paintings and correct them or add some things into them. And I'm always using the same brands and the same colors. So I'll never have a problem with that. But if you do change a lot of colors and experiment and try a lot of different colors, well, then I totally get that. That's fine. But you just have to remember that you'll need to figure out which brand you might have used of a certain color. Otherwise, it's going to be totally disharmonious. It'll be totally non-harmonious to your colors that you already have on your painting. All right, so now we've done our three. How many figures do we have here? One. This is the one in the foreground, the closest one to us. It's larger, obviously. Shadow over here underneath it. Then we have another figure over here, same thing, shadow underneath. So this is a man walking, a female here. She has a shopping bag. She's here by the doorway. And then we have another, maybe a gentleman over here. He's over here maybe chatting with someone else, or he's just walking and coming back from work, and he's heading home, or maybe he's heading out to work. And then we have another figure over here, an adult, and then maybe a small child with them. And so now we have a fair amount of figures. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 figures. All right, so we've sketched them out. Again, all the heads are on the same level all the way through the picture. The only thing that changes is the height of the figure, because as the figures in this painting head into the distance of the painting, they get smaller. the figures. The heads stay at the same height, but the overall size, shape of the figures changes. So the heads are smaller, the bodies are smaller over here. Then the head gets a little bigger, the body gets a little bigger here as it gets closer to us. And then here, this figure is larger, so his head's larger, and his body and legs are taller and larger because he's closer to us. So if you can just imagine, everything just keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller as it goes into the distance. Perfect. Okay, let's mix up some paint, and we'll start our figures. So for this, I suggest for our distant figures, I'm going to use the number 8 needlepoint brush. And I use this all the time. And then maybe for the figures that are larger, we'll use maybe like a number 6 Da Vinci Maestro Kolinsky Sable watercolor brush. And this is a squirrel hair brush, which is the needlepoint brush. So I'll dampen both of these up, set them aside on my table here, and we'll get started. So we're going to get moving along here. And I'll get some water from my water pail, fresh clean water. Okay, so we have our water, and we're all set. We have our brushes. The only thing I didn't mention is, since this is an ink and wash painting that we did just recently, we're going to use some ink on the figures. And the reason I say that is, if we did ink and wash on this painting, the thing that's going to harmonize with this painting will be using some ink in our figures as well. So we'll work it out as we go and figure out what we're going to want to use as far as the ink. We can change it around, change it up, kind of work as we go and see what's going to look good. We're going to use some ink. This is high quality Speedball Super Black India ink. That's what we use for our painting here, our ink and wash painting, watercolor painting. And we'll use the Speedball. This is an excellent brand, top quality. You buy this one container and it's good for like 5-10 years. You probably would have it. If you do ink and wash all the time, you might go through one of these, in like a couple years, or especially if you're using this with large paintings. So if you use really super large brushes and do like super large watercolor paintings, maybe 20 by 30s or larger, and you're using a lot of this ink, obviously you'll go through it. But if you're just using ink and wash style like this, just doing more average size paintings, and you're not getting into the really super large watercolors, this will last you for many years. Great investment. And we're going to just have a small plastic inkwell. So I have a small plastic inkwell. I bought about a dozen of these, and I use them over and over and over and save them until okay, and then we have the ink, and we just put a little bit in the bottom. Always remember, when you're using your inkwells and you're doing ink and wash, always only fill the very, very bottom of the inkwell up. Only a small amount, maybe like a smidgen of ink in there, because too much ink is going to, in this inkwell, when you're working, is going to cause a lot of puddles of ink, and you won't want that. So let's get started. We're going to dip our bamboo ink pen, which has a nice point on it, bamboo. And let's make the pants on this figure black. So we're going to make some black pants here. Now with the legs on figures, when you're doing legs, even if you're doing this with a brush, a watercolor brush, like a fine watercolor brush, you don't want to have the legs super big. You want to make them more smaller than you might see. So here, I'm just going to see how I'm sort of And I always have on standby a tissue to dry off, to dry off some of the ink. I don't want to go with too much ink. I want to try to. So there we go. So basically, you're doing like an X type shape or marking on your paper, so that you have the feeling of motion in this figure. You can also make them straight if you want. That's a really cool look too, when you just kind of make a real quick figure, just kind of sketching it out, real sketchy. And I'm making a little more motion in this figure, but you don't have to do that. You can actually, they look great too, just going real simple, like just kind of zipping it in quick, like in a second or two. I've seen those in many paintings that look great. All right, so now we have the legs here completed, just like a little bit of an X, one this way and one this way. And maybe we can put a little dark for the hair. On the bottom of the hair, we're going to leave the top of the hair a little bit lighter. So let's go with darker on the bottom of the hair. And then we'll leave the top of the head lighter, just where the pencil sketch is. And I think that's all we need for this figure. That's fine. Now we have a woman here. She's maybe coming back for from some shopping, or she's coming back from college or school or business, and she's by this door here. So let's make her legs the black ink too as well. And just and I just have a feeling of maybe a briefcase or something there. Very subtle. And we'll create different colors for the clothing. So we have so far 2 figures with the black pants. There's some shadowing over here. We could do the shadowing in the black ink. And we'll put some color too on these shadows. Just a little bit of black ink to start it out. Okay, and then we have 2 figures. We have 1, 2, and 3 figures over here. And again, I'll tap off some of that ink. And I'll make those a little more very small, very tiny. So just little dots for the heads. And maybe we'll make and we'll put some paint colors in here too for these figures, so that they stand out a little bit, like little tiny jewels of interest and color for these figures over here in the distance, and as well here too. But we will use, like I said, we want to harmonize the figures and blend them into this overall scheme of our ink and wash. So that means we have to use this ink on our figures in some way. Probably with each figure you want to have a little tiny bit of ink in there, whether it's the pants or the head, a hat, part of the shirt, some shadowing. You want to work that ink idea into your figures here, since this is an ink and wash overall, this painting. Okay, so now we have our ink completed on our figures. Now let's work in some color. But before we do that, let's take a quick break. Again, I always mention take lots of breaks. It helps with your concentration. When you come back, you'll look at your painting and you'll be more likely to maybe see some things that you didn't see when you were working, when you last left off. And you'll say, oh, wow, yeah, I didn't notice that before. Yeah, I'm gonna do something different now, coming back into the painting after the break, So let's keep that in mind. Hey, I just want to mention too, if you haven't subscribed, come on, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell next to the subscribe button. This way you know when my videos are coming out every weekend. You can't miss this stuff. This is just, we're having a great time here. We're learning all about figures in our paintings. So, all right, we'll come right back. And again, thanks again for watching, and we'll be right back. We'll finish up our figures in this painting, and you'll see how beautiful they look, and it adds so much more interest into this scene with some gorgeous figures that we have now in play. Okay, we're back again, and we're ready to start painting our figures. Hey, on this this episode, I'm also going to actually add in some more work over here to these trees and bushes on the right-hand side of this painting. The original painting that I created, which you can actually see if you look this up, you just type in ink and wash with Chris Petri. If you type that into the YouTube search bar, if you're watching this video at a time in the future. I created this painting, and now we're going back into this painting and we're modifying it. So you can go back in and modify your paintings at a later date when you think you might be interested in doing something like that. You might be taking this painting and saying, oh, I'm going to have a gallery show coming up. I need some paintings. Can I use some of my other paintings that I've already created, before, and maybe just, perk them up a little bit, make them look a little better, more exciting? You can do that, and that's what we're doing right here. So we're going to kind of modify this painting, make it a little better, make it a little more interesting, adjust a few things here and there, and we'll see how it goes. So we, just in this video, we were creating these additional figures in this scene. So let's continue with that. Okay, so we're just going to go with real simple colors. My palette is really out of view for the most part. Like my colors, you won't really need to see it because we're just going to really go with some simple colors here. Let's go with cadmium red. We're going to make this first figure. Let's use some cadmium red, some raw sienna. Let's see if we can get that on camera here. So we have, okay, we're on camera. That's good. Okay, so we have cadmium red straight out of the tube. And let's start working in that jacket or shirt. We can have it. It's up to us what we make it. So the top of the jacket's going to be a little lighter. Sometimes I'll take a little bit of the paint off the brush. Like that, just to make it a little bit lighter. And if you think no sense in going back and working with the ink anymore, so we'll just use this. We'll use some burnt umber in French ultramarine blue, make it dark. And we'll just raise up the belt line for this figure because it looked a little bit too low. So you can adjust as you go for your figures. And then we'll add some yellow ochre to the red for the flesh color. So that would be yellow ochre and cadmium red. And you kind of mix it until you see that flesh color you want. You can mix up your flesh colors any way you like them. And if something doesn't look all that great, you can blot it up. Maybe this figure has his arms and he's carrying a small bag. And we can make the bag a little darker. Burnt umber and French ultramarine blue there. And that's good. And we can take some more straight out of the tube, cadmium red. And that's plenty. For that figure, that looks good. A nice red shirt. We blend that in. Perfect. Now let's work to the next figure over here. Now we said this was a man walking. He has his briefcase. Maybe he's coming home from work. And another nice woman here is coming back from college or work. Same thing, carrying maybe a briefcase and We'll make her, maybe we'll have some cerulean blue. So we'll make her, since we have a lot of cerulean blue here, let's change that color. See, that's how we can change things. Let's say, what looks good with that? Maybe we can go with the red. Let's go with something, that's interesting. We can do something, let's use alizarin crimson. Alizarin crimson with a little bit of the cadmium red, just to make it a little different. And we'll use some burnt umber and French ultramarine blue for the hair, and we can just do the hair. And that can blend right into the blouse or the top, and that's pretty good. And that looks fine. Okay, so now we have 2 figures completed, looking beautiful. More excitement in this painting for sure. Some people moving about in our scene here. This figure here in the distance, let's use our needlepoint brush, which has a better point on it, it's a finer point, so we can get this detail over here. And let's maybe a yellow shirt. We'll take some cadmium yellow, cadmium lemon yellow, maybe a little orange, and we'll just we'll make it like a t-shirt. Looks good. And let's see, over here we have these other 2 figures. Let's go with some blue. Cerulean blue I think would look good. And there's maybe another figure. There's like a smaller figure, like a child there. We'll make some red. Maybe the child's wearing a red shirt. And then we'll take some purple and mix it in over here with our burnt umber, French ultramarine blue, and then we'll introduce some purple. So we'll have a nice shadow color. We'll take a little bit of paint off our brush, and we'll just make a little shadowing. And we'll do the same here, and the same there. And we'll do the same over here, just a little bit of shadow over there, barely noticeable. And the same here. Okay, looks fantastic. We added the figures in perfect. Now, we wanted to maybe enhance just a touch the bushes on the right side here, these bushes and the small area of foliage there. So I'm going to find my ink well. Okay, so I have my ink well and my bamboo ink pen, and we're going to use this bamboo ink pen, our ink well with just a little bit of ink in the bottom of it, maybe just like a 1/4 of an inch of ink, or maybe like a 1/2 centimeter of ink in the bottom of the ink well. And we're going to add on to this bush here. Now what this does is it will push the distance further back. And I also thought that when I did this, that when I did this originally, the lower portion of this, and let's zoom out a little bit. When I did the bottom of this, I didn't bring it up high enough. It's going to look better if this is higher up the these bushes and bit of trees on the right side here. So that's why I decided to change a little bit here, and I think it's a good thing. And that looks fine. Much better. Perfect. So now you can see we enhanced that just a touch. The bushes on the right. And we can take a little bit of paint and we'll continue to add a little bit of cadmium lemon yellow. Splashing it at it like that to give us that. There we go. Look at that. Perfect. Give it that light feel of some leaves and some blossoms. Interesting shapes and an interesting feel, but yet not trying to go too much with too much information on that area. That's going to maybe perfect. See that? Just like that. Let things happen as you work with watercolors. If you're doing an ink and wash like this, let things happen. Don't worry about your painting if it's a little bit, doesn't turn out perfect. No worries. That's when you come back another day or two later and you start another one and you don't worry about it. You're just learning every time you're picking up your paints, your brushes, your pencils, your ink, whatever you're working with in your medium of watercolor. It's all a learning process. You just keep going, learning about it, and eventually you'll just keep learning and growing and becoming better and better. Okay, so not doing too much touch-up, but I did see a few spots that you noticed I did fix up, but that's really about it. We added some gorgeous figures into this scene. Hope you enjoyed this video. It was just a quick video to say, hey, you know what, if you finish your painting and you think you need to add something, that's fine. Take the same approach as you did when you created the painting in the start. Just think it through, think of some ideas, take your time. And, just like we did here, we just really very slowly, methodically, we figured out where do we want the figures and how easy, we figured out how easy it is to get the proper scale of the figures by taking our first figure that we created and putting it next to an area that we know we've determined was a doorway. So we know this is a doorway going into this home. So therefore, your figure is going to be the same height as that doorway, from the bottom of the doorway to the top of the doorway here. And that's all we had to do. And then we just remember that we took all the, we used the ruler, and we made sure that all the heads of all the figures were on the same level. The only thing that changes as the figures get closer, they get larger from the head down. So the heads all stay the same. They just get smaller. So the heads get smaller and the bodies get smaller as they go into the distance, or in reverse, the bodies get larger as they come closer to us. Hopefully that's a real simple way to kind of gauge how you'll negotiate through adding some figures into your paintings. Have fun with it. Enjoy it. Thanks again for watching. I'm really glad you come here and watch my videos. We'll see you on the next, see you next time. Bye-bye.